Hello, AP English Language and Composition students. Welcome to Lesson 44. This is the essay by Herbert Spencer. And you have already, in your previous assignment, read it, understood its basic ideas. When you read it, you feel you understand it, and you do for what it states, right? But it's a whole nother level when you have to analyze the techniques that make it effective or not effective. In that case, it can become pretty complex, and I don't want to give you answers about those techniques outright, but I do want to give you hints that will point you in the right direction. When the AP company, the College Board, gives you essays to analyze for their quality, and the analysis essay that you would write on them, you have to be careful because they are usually going to have multiple levels of meaning to them, or complexity at least. So, a not very sophisticated reader would take one angle, where someone who sees more going on legitimately will show more meaning that's involved, right? This is the case here. This is not simplistic and easy to analyze. Someone who's not very sophisticated will take the position. They don't always ask you to do this on an analysis essay, but here they do. Take a position just as if you were writing an argument is what they're kind of saying. Do you support Spencer's view about the House of Commons? Do you totally disagree with him? Do you totally agree with him? Or do you somewhat disagree and somewhat agree? Now, as I said, you normally just do that with straight up argument writing, but here they're wanting you to do it with your analysis. So, you're trying to figure out, is he accurate? So he is finding them, the House of Commons, to have been foolish in their decisions to strike down the water bill. If you just take everything at face value for what he claims, all of these analogies he gives, then you're swallowing everything as if it were totally correct and you're agreeing with him. It's not a very good way to go, all right? It's not showing that you know anything about any potential flaws in his reasoning. So let's look at this paragraph by paragraph. There are only 3 paragraphs. I'm going to point some things out to you, but you have to figure the rest out. All right, so there is a region called this. Some springs occur in that area. They feed into the river, the Thames, which runs through London. But this is not London. But anyway, out in the countryside. And these springs are referred to as the sources of the Thames. Why? Because the word sources, it doesn't mean the origin of the Thames, like the sole origin for sure, it doesn't mean that. The word for spring in French is source. And so the English use some of those French cognate words like that, and it just means like the springs that go into the Thames, right? So, anyway, Spencer's point in this first paragraph has to do with how these springs are being referred to and the result that they are having, the wording is having on people. So an article was written, as you know, in the Times magazine, the Times newspaper, and the title, the title was Threatened Absorption of the Thames. All right. So a company applied to Parliament to get some of this water from these springs, and this is what this article was about, right? But because the title was that way, and because the springs are referred to as the sources, Herbert Spencer is saying that a lot of people would have been led astray to think that this was like the only origin of the Thames and so on. And so the amount of water referred to, 1 million gallons per day, without a greater perspective around that, how much of the river it actually is. He's saying that this article, and also the way the springs are referred to, leads people to think incorrectly about how important those springs are to the Thames as a whole. Okay, so we get that. Think about it this way, though. He has 2 more paragraphs to write in this essay. His claim is that the House of Commons acted foolishly. This is about a newspaper article. Keep that in mind. Yes, it is related, to what happens later, maybe. But I'm not going to say anything more. If you want to piece it together and think about it, think about the logical fallacy or red herring. Think about that, how this might constitute that. Okay, just think about that. That's the main thing that will be helpful to you there. But also, when he says, Herbert Spencer writes, 1 million is an alarming word, he's claiming that other people are falling into incorrect ways of thinking that are really logical fallacies in their thinking. He also might be implying that this newspaper article and the journalist who wrote it, though he calls him a paragraphist, that maybe intentionally he was doing something, all right? And by using this type of designation for the amount of water without giving a greater perspective. So this could also be termed another logical fallacy, not on the part of Spencer maybe, but he's saying other people are bringing this about. Okay, that would be a totally different logical fallacy than the red herring one. So think about that. Moving on to paragraph 2. Now, Herbert Spencer starts to focus on the members of Parliament, the House of Commons. Do understand what the House of Commons is in Parliament. There are 2 parts to Parliament, the House of Lords, the House of Commons. The House of Lords, the members in that part of Parliament have their seats in Parliament based on heritage. They're in the aristocracy, the upper class. They get their seats passed down to them, right, by their family line. This is not them. This is the House of Commons. These people are elected as representatives, right? So what does that imply? Keep that in mind when you see how Spencer is attacking them so much. You've got to have a greater perspective than not everything is going to be stated that you have to understand. Okay, so you have to see the big picture here. It really goes back to the rhetorical triangle. Understand, the author. Understand the author's relation to the topic. Understand the author's relation to the audience. Okay, so this one is the author's relation to the focus on House of Commons. All right, he thinks very lowly of them. Is that legitimate? All right, so right here in the second paragraph, he states, imaginations of members were affected by this 1 million gallons daily. He also labels them this. That could be termed a logical fallacy. I'm not going to give you the name of it, but it's not going to the issue at hand. It's going to the people involved, and that's not appealing to logos. All right? So keep that in mind. All right, now, we do have, starting around here, this series of analogies that Herbert Spencer starts to formulate and give us in a series, hopefully to help us understand, how much water this really is, or how insignificant he says it really is. So we do have a series of analogies. You might say that's very effective. Is it? Okay. Why might it not be? Now I'm going to jump to the last paragraph. Oh, I don't want to go that far down. Let's see. Okay, in our last paragraph, he refers to what had happened in the proceedings in the House of Commons leading up to the vote on this bill. All right, this group went bankrupt and they weren't there. But supposedly they said that they would have been making a certain claim about this water. That they would have opposed this bill. All right, they weren't there, but he's claiming that because the members of Parliament, the House of Commons, knew that they would have been opposed, they would have opposed it too. Consider that. Consider the validity of that. And then, supposedly, a member of House of Commons said shoals and flats would be created by the diversion of the water, and supposedly from reports, there wasn't a response to that, a verbal response. What does that mean? Herbert Spencer is saying that that it means that they agreed, that they weren't reacting to something they should have understood as a fallacy, all right? That they weren't noticing something they should have noticed. Is that true? Right? Is it just because they were quiet they didn't realize? Okay, and then we have the final vote, 118 to 88. So it wasn't a landslide against the bill either, so keep that in mind. But what might have been some of the other considerations of the House of Commons members for voting down the bill? Spencer assumes it was because they didn't understand and they thought that this water was significant. What other thoughts might they have had that he's not considering? Hopefully that will help you in writing your outline for an essay on this. Thank you.